is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's the Rocket Hour. Y'all are now tuned in. Time to hit the pick four that you'd love to win. If your money's coming slow, step on the faster track with your host, Ricky Pasternak. Let's go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Rocket Hour. I wish we still had some time to talk about the Pegasus, but we have to move on. We have to get to this week's racing. How was the rest of your time? There was a little Twitter back and forth. I was able to update everyone on kind of the consensus guide, which was cool. I hope everyone can follow along with that. I will obviously be keeping standings of how we kind of do throughout the year. I think it's just a fun way to kind of see how we're doing and kind of make this a little competitive. Aaron, how was your last, 48 hours or so since we were last on?
Oh, man, it's been good. It's been really good. I woke up today really excited for another Rocket Hour, and I thought something we can kind of do because we can't recap the Pegasus anymore. So the last 15 minutes of the show, we kind of recap and what has happened, whether it was last weekend or what we did the day before. We're going to do listener questions at the end of the show today. I've got 3 listener questions. We're going to try to make them kind of an educational betting psychology type segment there for the last 15 minutes. You're going to want to stick around because I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to admit something that I've never admitted before, and I'm also going to tell the public why I'm jealous of Ricky Pasternak. And who would have ever thought those words would have came out of my mouth? But I'm going to do 2 things there. So you want to stick around for that. But no, I'm super excited for the card at Gulfstream as well. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone be jealous of me. So I'm anxious and nervous. On a serious note, though, if I don't seem 100% not into it, but just look a little groggy, unfortunately, I have tested positive for COVID. I told Aaron yesterday, I'm doing okay. Just a little bit out of it, a little tired. I told him, I said, we will not stop the Rocket Hour. I don't care if I only have an hour of energy. We will do this. I'm not stopping no matter what, for 2 reasons. 1, because I love getting on here with you. More importantly, that's 1. And 2, I just love breaking down the cards. I think it's unbelievable what we do, the betting psychology. So like you said, we're going to do this no matter what. And we're going to be into it. I'm going to show as much energy and be as into it as possible. Without further ado, let's kind of get into today's card. We'll do the mailbag at the end. Mm-hmm. We're going to start here with race 7. I'll kind of start with you. I'll introduce this one. This is claiming for 12,500 through 10,000 for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and upward, going 6 furlongs on the on the dirt. I almost said the turf for a minute. I thought this was one of the more interesting races on the card. I thought there were a lot of ways you can go. Kind of tell me what you thought of this one.
Yeah, I agree with your thoughts. This is a race that has a lot of intrigue, is how I would describe it. I think when you start with this race, I began and ended with the 4 and the 9. So real quick, a $5 exacta box with the 4 and the 9 was my play here, $10 wager total. I'll break it down. I picked the 4 on top. I'm a daredevil. Huge jockey upgrade today, right? Nothing against Torres, but now you've got Irad Ortiz Jr., and when he rides for this barn, you always see his horses run well. 7 times in the last year, 57% have won, 100% have hit the board. That's really good when you're looking to play an exacta or trifecta box. This is a good horse to use. Last 3 races, won at this level twice in a row, and last time out finished second by 3/4 of a length. The second horse I used was the 9 Midtown Rose, and why I bring her up next, she's the one that beat I'm a Daredevil last time out. So logically, this is the horse to use. One big minus, in my opinion, now not in the barn of Saffie Joseph Jr. One big positive, Jose Ortiz picks up the mount. So it's not like this horse, isn't well met for this race. No doubt she probably is. Another big minus, Irad Ortiz jumps off the 9 into the 4. So there was enough intrigue in both of them, though, that I wanted to get them both involved. And so that's why I did go with the exacta box here. I debated a little bit about just playing the win on number 4, I'm a Daredevil. But in the end, I thought, the 9 has early speed, and the 9 is drawn outside. Obviously, she has the outside post of everybody. So she's drawn outside of all the speed, picks up Jose Ortiz. There's really enough good factors there to think she's going to run well again. So I use the 4-9 in the exacta box. I'll kick it to you now for some of yours.
Yeah, so I agree with you on the 4 and 9. I don't have too many problems. I'll be honest. I put the 4 for my 4th place spot, and I put the 9 for my 2nd. I'm using the 4, 6, 8, 9. This was the race I tried to eliminate more, but I just couldn't. The other 2 I used. I'll start with the 6, Free to Fly. I think the mile is a little too long for him. I'll be honest. I don't think that's where he wants to go, where she wants to go. Excuse me. The race 2 back was interesting for Elizabeth Dobles. She lost to I'm a Daredevil and to Worth Avenue, who we're not using in this spot. I think with Paco Lopez aboard, he's going to be a little bit more aggressive with her, and I think she can get to the lead. I didn't really know. We talk about this all the time. We don't really know who has to be on the lead. I think this is one of those dirt sprints where we were kind of searching for speed. Usually the speed kind of pops out to us, which is a little weird to be in this situation. So I use the 6, and I think Ken Sweezy, no offense to Elizabeth Dobles, is just a little bit better, and I think he's going to get a little bit more out of her. And I think getting Paco Lopez will kind of give you that Luis Saez ride and be aggressive. And Luis Saez did try to put her on the front. It was just one of those situations where she just wasn't as good as Decente going a mile. I think if she's going 6.5 furlongs, you see a little bit better of a trip from her, and I put her 3rd. Tell me I'm nuts here. I put the 8-1 Delaniga, I don't know, on top, and this is my reason. Look at the races that she's run. Again, in the group of 6, 2 of the races have been on the dirt. I think those are good enough to win this spot. If you look 5 starts back, I know we're going a little bit far back there. On September 11th, going 5 furlongs on the dirt, she won by 7 lengths. That was at the claiming 16,000 level. That's a little bit better than this. The next start, the allowance optional claiming on a sloppy track, she finished 3rd by 1.5 lengths on the sloppy track on the dirt. The next 3 starts were on the turf. I don't know why this horse is on the turf. The claiming crown, fine, you wanted to give her a shot. Jakarta would win this race running backwards. So I don't think that's a good spot. And then the next one out on the turf, she was able to close, but she's not really a closer. If you look at her dirt form, she's 3 for 6 on the dirt. That's too much to not include. And here at Gulfstream, she's 3 for 4 on the dirt. So this is one of those situations that at 8-1, I think there's way too much value. I might not get her to the winner's circle, but if I see anything towards 8-1 or 10-1 or even down to 6-1, I'm playing a win ticket because in her races on the dirt, she got to the lead and she was really, really tough to keep off of it. The race on October 3rd, you could say, well, it was a sloppy track. I'll counteract and say the race before that, it was good, which isn't that far away from fast. Tell me I'm not nuts with that horse because she kind of jumped out on paper to me.
I think it's a really good use, Ricky. I really do. And we've talked about Carlos David a lot on this show because he runs a lot of horses on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, kind of in these lower races. He doesn't have a lot of studs in the barn, but as far as horses of this caliber, he's got a lot. So I actually really love that, that you've included the 8 there. I definitely think getting back to the dirt was the big point. I agree that the 6 is one that you should probably use in your pick 4. I want to address the 1 because Sweezy has 2 in here and Luis Saez jumps aboard the 1. And so you're like, okay, that's a good sign. But then you look at the class of the 1 and it's just not there. Yes, 2 wins in a row, but for half of the claiming tag of what she's in for today, I didn't know what to do. I threw this horse in 4th, just kind of as a classic defensive type of use. What did you think of the 1? I was really confused that Saez got aboard here.
I'm very, very, very scared of this horse.
Yeah.
And for the reason so, I almost wish I could switch the ticket. I like the class that the 6 has been holding, but the problem with the 1, how do you ignore a horse that's won by 6 lengths, even if it was half the distance? But this is how I'm going to do it. Luis Saez hops aboard. Of course he does. I would say he had his choice between the 1 and probably the 6. That seems in the group of 6. Those are the only ones he's been on. But I would make the case that moving forward, the 6 could easily be a horse that is in for a tag and stays for a tag. If the 1 does win here, I wouldn't be surprised to see the 1 protected moving forward. And I think that's important to note. The other thing is, to your point with the class, it was not only was it 62 5 claimers, it was a condition, non-winners of 3 lifetime. Now you're stepping out of that condition. That's 1. And 2, I don't know if she's good. She's good at this distance. She's 2 for 4 here, but I think she really showed her prowess maybe going longer last time out. And she was 4 to 5. So that's what she's supposed to do. You're supposed to win like that at 4 to 5. This is a massive step up. If she's gonna beat me, I'll be willing to take it. I could see her winning, but I'm not putting 5 on the ticket unless it's a race. The only time, and we've talked about this, the only time I'll put 5 on a ticket is if it's like a 5-horse field and I'm just gonna hit the all button. I'm not gonna put 5 on a ticket when there's 9 in here. And I like the 8 that much. Maybe if I didn't like the 8 as much, I would include the 1, but I really do like the 8. I don't know. I think she's going to be hit down. I think she's going to be a shorter price than the 6, and that's not something I'm willing to take.
Yeah, 2 quick points before we move on. Michael Myers chimes in, says the 3 could be the lone speed. The 3 is taking that huge class plunge, and a lot of times those horses do kind of get out to the lead. Where I would disagree, Michael, I don't think the horse is a lone speed. I do think the horse will show speed. I think there's a few others in the race that can kind of run with her early. And since she's drawn inside of all those other horses, I think the trip's kind of going to be tough. But, big class drop, so we'll see what happens. And then also, he said he doesn't like the 1. Look who he was claimed by previously. So Barboza is the barn that the 1 is coming out of, and he's very good off the claim first out, which was the situation last time. So that's a couple of good points there. Yeah, this is, like you said, you kind of wanted to, at the first, you said you kind of wanted to go a little deeper here. It's just tough here because you got some other horses you're going to want to use a little bit later down the line.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I kind of like the 3 more than the 1. If the 1's going to beat me out of a condition claimer, then go for it. Yeah. I think 8 to 1 is important to note. I would use the 3, but I don't think lone. Yeah, I definitely don't agree with lone speed. And in the group of 6, she has 1 race at 6 furlongs. I mean, it wasn't good. Granted, it was better, but she didn't pass 1 horse. She consistently lost ground. I just think she's probably better going longer, even though she's 6 for 15 at this distance in the money and has 4 wins. It just seems like she was a sprinter a long, long time ago. But if she could refine her best form, she's good enough to win in this spot. I agree. Let's move on to horses that are going to be protected, everyone except for the 6 unmatchable. This is starter optional, claiming 16,000 for 4-year-olds and upward, going 1 mile on the dirt. I went really, really short here. I'm going to only use the horse that I put on top, and I'll let you maybe talk about a few others. I used the 1 Brasstown. I think he is a standout. I don't know how this horse loses. Now, I'll probably walk him right into a 5th place finish, knowing my luck. But the claiming at the 35,000, it was a condition claimer. Fine. He won by 6 1/4. The the claiming level at the 35,000 is probably better than the starter optional 16. I think this is almost a class drop. And even if you want to say, fine, I want to see how he did against something similar. If you want to look for 2 races back, 3 races back, 4 races back against starter optional claiming, he was pretty good, except for the race against Avant Garde. Avant Garde is one of the best and most consistent horses at this level. So, and then Snap Hook went on to win next time out, who was second to Avant Garde in that race. So we talk about kind of looking at fields and see how they do. I talked about the Saratoga Derby to no end last time out. I think that starter optional claiming race will come back much better. And I think Brasstown proved that, winning at the 35,000 level last time out. I also used the 3 Please Sit Down. that was more so for the fact that I think if this thing heats up, he can close. And the last time out, I mean, he won by 10 lengths. I don't really see him as a true win candidate, but I do see some other horses that are going to show speed. And if they're going to be too, like the 8, Robin Take Charge, I think the 5, Candy Crush 'Em, will be close, a little bit closer as well. And for going a mile, there seems like there's more speed in this race than there was at the 6 furlong. So I just figure if Please Sit Down can run a race similar and close, then he's got a shot. But I'm all over the 1 Brasstown.
Well, you said it really perfectly. And if you see the screen scrolling on the bottom, this is my biggest bet of the day, and it's $20 to win on number 1 Brasstown. So we are definitely on the same horse here as far as loving a horse, and that's always a great sign. Sometimes we really aren't. Maybe we're on the same horse, but we're not. The confidence level isn't the same. Boy, we really are the same here. This horse to me seems to be a lock as well. So let's see if we can get him off the board. I'll just speak on it as well. The biggest reason, and you touched on it, he's beaten better horses than these other horses have beaten. And yes, he is, quote unquote, stepping up in class. But you look at the horse that he's facing, he's faced much tougher. And the other big point, to me, the horse looks like a lone speed. I think the 5, you're going to look at the past performances and you're going to say, well, the 5's got speed too. The 5 has speed against a weaker group. Okay. And I think that's always important. We kind of touched on in the last race. Allowance speed is different from claiming speed. And I just think Brasstown has a lot more speed than the 5. I think the horse gets out to a perfect trip, gate to wire. I like the Sano barn. I like Zayas here at Gulfstream. There's just not a lot to not like about the 1. I think Brasstown gets the job done fairly easily. I did like the 5 in second. I touched on them. We'll touch on some other ones here just for a second. Just if you want a different option, the 5 won by 7 lengths at the 12K claiming level. I think the 5 would be the favorite if the 1 wasn't in the race. So I do think the 5 is one you have to respect and kind of follow here. Another horse I kind of liked I think will be a bit of a price is the 8. He's won 2 of his last 3 races on the dirt. Now, last time out went to the turf and did no running whatsoever. To me, if there is going to be pace pressure, it's going to come from the 8. I still don't think he's fast enough, but he's going to be forwardly placed. And I didn't love a lot of the closers in here. So I definitely think the horses that are towards the front are going to be the ones that hit the board. So I think the 8 is a little bit sneaky. But yeah, really, it was really hard for me to have a real strong feeling about anybody but number 1 Brasstown. I think he outclasses this group.
Yeah, there's another comment here from Mike saying, speaking of the 4 ran decently last time out. I don't disagree. The thing that I don't love about the 4, this is my personal preference. This might mean nothing. I do not like horses that are scheduled for the turf, run over a sloppy track, and come back on the dirt for 2 reasons. 1, they wanted to see how this horse did on the turf. That's for starters. Mm-hmm. 2, the other thing is they're not sure what to do with this horse. I'm not saying they don't know what to do with this horse, but Rasharn Creek, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, 0 for 3 at the meet with 1 third place finish. That's not a horse I'm going to buy any stock into. That's just me personally. I hope I'm not saying anything negatively, too negatively, or going on a rant here. If you look at his races, again, in the group of 6, let's start with the fact he hasn't run since October 25th. And he wasn't all that competitive. He did finish 3rd to Avant Garde, but I didn't even see any progression. He kind of was off by 5 lengths, 5 1/4. Kind of just sat there, which I guess you can make the case against Avant Garde isn't bad. But I would also make the case that if you kind of see the ranks, there's no real progression. Aaron, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's like starter optional claiming, allowance optional claiming. Like they just don't know what to do with him. And then he was entered for the turf. I don't exactly know why, because he has better dirt form. But then they put him back on the dirt when he was like, there just seems like there's too much. And I think the 1 is just too much of a standout. Maybe if the 1's not in here, I have a different opinion, but I'm not going to bet a trainer that has 1 third place finish in 3 starts with this much unknown, not having run in multiple months.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points there. And just for people that maybe are like, well, don't really know Avant Garde, he finished third on Saturday on Pegasus Day in the Fred Hooper Stakes. That was a race that was won by Performer, and Eye of a Jedi was second. So yeah, I mean, just to kind of throw out that's kind of what we're referring to. Really good race last time out in a Grade 3, and obviously these horses aren't Grade 3 horses here, so it just kind of shows any horse that was coming out of a race he was in. That's a pretty good horse. That's a horse that has some talent. So yeah, I'm with you though. To Michael's point, I did look at the 4 pretty hard, and I'm with you, Ricky. I just couldn't get there with them.
Yeah, and again, we're not we learn. I don't want to say learn this lesson, but Aaron and I have talked about it. If you have an opinion on a horse, we will never talk you off of it. As long as you can make a logical thought process, we don't even have to agree with it. At least we should just be able to say, okay, we hear you. And if you want to make the point, the 4 ran well against Avant Garde, that's good enough for me because I put a lot of stock into it. I just think there are other ways you can go. I'll be honest, I didn't have him in my top 4. Again, I'm probably walking him into the winner circle now, but at the same time, I just think the 1 is a standout for me. Aaron agrees. And the 3, I just think there's a lot of speed, and he is the one who's going to be coming from well back. And if it does break down for some reason, that's kind of the way I went. I wouldn't take a deep closer in this spot, anything short of 5-1. I don't think we'll get that with the 3. So that's kind of my second choice. The 4 is scratched. All right. Well,
it's all that time.
Yeah. So there's that. Again, I'm looking at it here. There were no scratches. Yeah. So we appreciate that. Dennis says I'm walking him into the vets list. I hope I'm not. I don't want any horses to be hurt. That's the last thing I want. Let's move on to the back half of the sequence. It started optional claiming $50,000 for 3-year-old, going 5 furlongs on the turf. This is my type of race. I don't care if I run. I don't care if I run last. Well, I do. I don't want to run last. But this is what does it for me. I love the turf sprints. I really, really do. I also like the fact that Gulfstream, they kind of start at the very, very beginning of that turn, and they can really eliminate themselves. You see a lot of times at 5 furlongs, they're starting like kind of in the middle of the turf back there, and they don't have that much time to separate themselves. They have a lot of time here to kind of put themselves into position. I'll let you start with this one. Where did you kind of go? I kind of thought this race was wide open. I think we kind of have a similar opinion, just kind of the way we see races.
Yeah. So when I started this, I thought, okay, I don't really know where I'm going to go. This is kind of confusing. But the more I looked at it, I thought the 7 Chasm really started to jump off the page to me. And I really like that square price of 7-2. And so I put a $10 win wager on number 7 Chasm as my bet for this one. I didn't feel as strongly about strongly with Chasm as I did about Brasstown. I'll be very clear about that. But I still thought, I think this is the best wager to make here because I like that price. So Chasm, why I like the horse, last time out debuted for the Mike Maker barn and just ran a really solid, improved race. Won at this distance. It was a 50K maiden claimer. I like that it was for 50 and not like 20, like we're going to talk about in the next race. I just think there's a huge difference at Gulfstream between the 20K level and the 50K level. So I liked that. I liked that the horse showed early speed but didn't have to have the lead. I think that's really, really important in these 5 furlong turf races at Gulfstream. You want to be forwardly placed, but you don't necessarily have to be in front. And I think Chasm kind of fits that bill. I think we can just kind of ride this horse, keep him to the outside and just kind of, sit in that second, third spot today. A lot to really like about Chasm. I was just really excited the more and more I handicapped this race and looked at the 7. So that's my win wager. I will go on, and I know that you used the 2 and 5, so I'm going to let you talk about them. I put the 1 in second. I'm really interested to see this horse on the turf. Reason being, there's really not a great reason to move this horse to the turf because the horse has ran 4 times on the dirt and has finished second, first, and second. And I don't think Kathleen O'Connell is dumb. I think She's a very good trainer. So I thought, man, that's really interesting that this horse moves to the turf today. And also, has some turf pedigree. I think especially on the bottom side, I really like the turf pedigree. I don't know. I thought this was an interesting entry. I thought it was kind of the stranger danger, if you're going to like put a line on it. Debut on the turf, got early speed, much like the 7, the horse can show early speed. This might be the one that's taken them, ahead and leading them into the turn as they approach the wire. So I did use the 1 in exactas and tries, but I'm all about the 7. So I'll kick it to you to talk about your other 2 horses.
So before we get to I want to talk about the 1, not to disclaim. That's the same theory that I used with the 2. The 2 is going to get on the turf for the first time also. So it's one of those situations, well, I'm going to use the 2. Why not the 1? If you look at that allowance optional claiming race for $60,000 winners of 2 lifetime, for the 2, it's just so much better than the race that the 1 ran. They both lost by a length, coming in second. The 1 does have more recent form, which is important to note. But if the 2 runs that race, what he did on the turf, on the dirt, coming to the turf, it's over in my book. I don't know if anyone's going to catch him. It is interesting to note that he had Alberto Burgos, who was riding with a 7-pound allowance, 5-pound allowance last time, and 7 in his debut. But it is also, I do like the fact that Edgar Zayas is going to pick up the mount here. I think that's important because he could have been on the 1. Time won't let me go. Now, it's possible that Kathleen O'Connell wanted Junior Alvarado, but my guess, and Aaron, maybe you could speak on this, Edgar Zayas is a Gulfstream guy, 365 days a year. Kathleen O'Connell is a Gulfstream girl, probably 355 days of the year. So I just thought if that was a true win candidate for Edgar, he would have been there. And it's weird, Safi Joseph is pretty much a Gulfstream, but he has been expanding to other locations as well. But we all know him for a Gulfstream guy. So I think that spoke volumes. I also just think the 2 is better. Not to discredit the 1. I do agree that this is an interesting spot considering his most recent races. He's finished his first or second in every race, so he shouldn't be discredited. I just kind of looked at that angle, and I thought the 2 was a little bit better. The 5, I really, really enjoyed what he did on the turf last time out. It was his first turf start. It was his first start since being gelded. I'll be honest, that doesn't mean much to me. I don't really care about first time gelding. That's not an angle that I necessarily look at. I do like the fact that the 5 gets Irad Ortiz back when the 7 had Irad last time out. Mike Maker does use Tyler Gaffleone a lot, so I don't think that's something where it says, whoa, let's pump the brakes. But he was also, to Mike's point, he was on the 8 Ensign Parker also. If I'm going to choose between 8-1 shots between the 1 and the 8, I'm choosing the 1, but I'm not using either of them. I'll be honest, I chalked out here, and I think the 2 is really, really, really going to be tough to beat if he's going to take to the turf at all. If he doesn't, then I was just wrong. But if the 1 we're making the same case for, he has, I don't want to say no turf pedigree, but we haven't seen him on the turf. So we're kind of making the same parallel. Mm-hmm. What did you think of, I shouldn't say what do you think of that analysis, but what did you think of my thinking? Because the 1 and 2 both haven't run on the turf before.
Yeah, I liked it. I used the 2 and the 5 as my 3rd and 4th choices. I think the 5 is the next logical horse, only because you've seen the turf form. We saw it with our own eyes last time out. You made a really good point. The horse, ran pretty well on the turf, and now we kind of know, what he is. Samich likes the 8 a little bit, and the reason why I brought it up, that's just another horse that's finally getting to the turf. So we're talking about the 1, we talked about the 2, here's the 8. I would highly agree with Samich if Irad Ortiz stayed aboard. He was aboard last time, and now he jumps to the 5, and that was kind of my decision because he was also aboard the 5 last time, and so he chooses the 5. That was kind of my decision between the 5 and 8 of who to put in 4th. So that was kind of my thing. But again, it's a horse that's getting to the turf for the first time, and you just really never know until they do it, what it's going to be. We can take educated guess based on a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different, if it's pedigree or it's trainers, but we just never really know until they touch it. So we'll see what happens with the 8. I don't hate it, but I leaned towards the 1 and the 2 for the first time turfers. I think this is a good scenario for you because I really think the 5 and 7 kind of cover it as far as if a horse that's touched the turf is going to win this race, it's going to be the 5 or the 7. And then you just took a shot with the 2. I don't hate it at all. I think this is a pretty good structure by you. I just chose to keep it a little simple and say the 7 had a really, really nice performance on the turf. Mike Maker, second time out. That's never a bad thing. I did agree with you. The jockey thing is a little interesting, but Gaffleone on the turf at Gulfstream is not something that I'm going to take as a negative, kind of like you pointed out. So for all those reasons, that's why I kind of landed on the 1, the 1, the 2, the 5, and the 7 here. But the 7 was the one I felt strongly about. So put the $10 win wager on that one.
There are a few comments before we move on. Mike says second son of Warfront was claimed to go on the turf, and I completely agree with that statement. I just want to know why he hasn't been on the turf since that point. It's not like we couldn't find turf races at Gulfstream. So that's the thing that threw me off. I do like the 8. If he was, let's say he was claimed out of the January, let's say even the December 3rd race. To me, now he gets on the turf maybe second time back. They want to run him on the dirt, see what they have. Now get him on the turf, that's fine. But there were plenty of opportunities. That's why I kind of went away. And I'm not using the 1. Time Won't Let Me Go, who also hasn't been on the turf. So if I'm choosing between, I would just choose the 1 for the mere fact that he finished well behind last time out as the favorite. That's disappointing to me. Sure, can he win? And if he is a second son of Warfront and he comes on the turf and looks like a stud, okay, then I'll be willing to be wrong. That's just one comment. The other one is the 3, talking about a lot of sloppy tracks. Oh, that's fine, but we saw him on the turf, last time out at this level. Wasn't all that good. I am not going to take the 3 based on what he did last time out at this spot. And then the other comment, which is a little funny, the 9 is a filly. That's why I couldn't bet the 9. I think we kind of saw Swiss Skydiver run well against the boys. So it's not always a true theory, the fillies running against the boys. But I do agree at this level, I would prefer I get a boy as well. Do you want to touch on any of those comments before we move on?
Yeah, the thing about the 3 that I am a little interested in, and again, I didn't use the horse, but I think it's interesting. Paco Lopez has been on every time, so that's a good sign. And the cutback, yes, a mile at this level didn't do very well, but that cutback in distance might help. If you're going to use a long shot here, I don't think it's awful. I just kind of went elsewhere. And listen, it's a situation. You can't use every damn horse in the race, right? So you got to make some cuts somewhere, and that's just kind of when you had to cut. The 9, nothing to do with being a filly, just really inconsistent. Finally got to the winner's circle last time out when she was able to get kind of an easy lead. I just don't see that happening. I see a lot of speed, and I think that 7 really showed the ability to lay off. And that's kind of why I thought, okay, you're going to need that ability again, because I do think there's going to be a lot of speed in this race. Naturally, there is a lot of speed in a 5 furlong race anyway, but there's some burners kind of signed up here as well. So it wasn't that she was a filly. I just can't think the 9. I don't know. I kind of think the speed, might get her today. And she might be up against it. But hey, it's a good sign that Saez is aboard for the 3rd straight time. There's a lot to like about all these horses.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point, we kind of talked about who's going to be on the lead. I do agree. You kind of the 7 looks like he's going to have the perfect trip sitting right behind. We do want to bring on Mike, who's been kind of commenting. We're going to bring him in here now. He said he had a question about the level, not about the horses. So we're going to bring Mike on now. Mike, we always love the comments and questions. Kind of walk us through your thought process and kind of what you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, hey guys, first time, long time, 6'2", 205. Excited to get on the show here and ask a quick question of you. So I have found this January some of the toughest races to handicap are these 3-year-old starter allowance races or optional claiming races where a lot of the horses are first-time Lasix. And we've got 6 of the 8 horses here, first-time Lasix, because they're 3-year-olds, and at certain tracks like Stronach, you can't use Lasix as a 2-year-old. The 6 and the 7 both won for first time out with Lasix in the early 3-year-old season. Does that adjust your handicapping at all? Kind of who's used Lasix, who hasn't, who's adding them, and how have you guys kind of projected for improvement on those? I'll jump off the air and looking forward to hear the answers, guys.
Yeah, I love it. It's a loaded question. I don't think Mike heard at the beginning when he said I tested positive for COVID. So thanks for pushing me to the brink here at 11:35. I'll go first. I definitely do factor it in. Mike brought up a lot of points in terms of first-time Lasix. This is one of those situations that, again, we've talked about this. These horses in my book are really 2-year-olds that because of the turn of the year, they're now 3-year-olds. It's not like a person where you really wait 365 days. If you were born on a day, you are 3. And that's why I think Slim said it best. We came on here and said, happy birthday to all the horses. Like, you all move up a year. So I think that's really, really important to note. I don't factor it in that much necessarily at this distance. And the reason why, I think they all have speed. There are very few horses in this spot, and maybe the 9 is one of them that's going to come from off the pace. So I definitely factor it in somewhat. Would it be the deciding factor for me in terms of horse A or horse B? Potentially, but we'd have to be in like the 8th factor. Seriously, like for me, we'd have to be pretty far down the list. Look, I think I talked about it with Dennis or Michael Myers earlier. Well, if you want to use that as, I don't want to say an excuse, but for a reason to pick a horse, then go for it. I don't need anyone to make up a new rule book for it. That's just not something that I personally put a lot of stock into. That's just me. Aaron, what do you kind of think about Mike's comments and question? And how do you kind of look at the situation?
It's a very difficult dilemma, and if you really want a really good reference, listen to Magic interview Graham Motion a couple of weeks ago. It's on a podcast of the Magic Mike Show. He did an excellent job, and Motion brought up the point of it's just there's so many different rules and so many different races and class levels and age group and stakes and all this shit. It's very tough. I usually try to factor it in, probably a little more than like the 8th factor, maybe the 3rd or the 4th factor. But yeah, it's really tough. I like that the 6 and the 7 have ran well using the Lasix. I think that's good, but it's one of those things, right? Any horse can move up. If a horse has been bleeding and now all of a sudden you got Lasix, gonna move up. I mean, that's just a simple fact of it. I think a good thing about it is for the 5 furlong distance, if you kind of listen to Graham Motion, horses kind of tend to bleed the longer they run. So maybe in this situation we can kind of lessen the factors. But yeah, you better be ready to make it a factor going forward. You just have to. So that's, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree, especially as we're getting that data. And I think Samich made a very good point. As we get this data coming in, yeah, we're going to start realizing, okay, here's the data points that we have, and here's how we got to look at things moving forward. So yeah, it's a very complicated issue right now, and hopefully as we move on, we get more uniform with the rules to where we have data points and it's consistent at every track, and we know what we're dealing with.
That is the biggest issue with me in horse racing, the biggest. And it goes along the same lines with college sports. We need a commissioner, because this is one of those situations where you have exit something at some track, Y at another track, and Z at another track. It's the one thing about horse racing and bettors is what we try to do is we try to find value based on unknowns. The more we know, the more formful it's going to be. This is a completely unknown. We don't know how some horses are going to do without it. Aaron, to your point, this is a really, really quick sprint. They don't bleed as much or maybe as quickly. Again, I'm not a vet. I don't know the details. Please listen to the Graham Motion interview if you really want to get into it. Magic did a great job with that. I don't know. Honestly, I will be the first one to tell you, I don't know the absolute details of how the horses bleed and things like that. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know. But what I will say is he made it a pretty strong case that the longer they go, the more likely and the more detrimental it will be. So I guess I'll factor that in. What I will say is if you didn't factor it in before, you might want to consider doing it now, because when Mike came on here, he made a point, and I think Aaron just talked about these sires and things like that. Mike says there are 500 commissioners. Yeah, but there's not one commissioner for the sport. And we kind of saw that. We see there's a commissioner for each conference. There's not one for the entire sport, and that's why we had the Big East playing one half of a basketball game and then canceling it at halftime. So that's exactly why we're not. That's what I meant by commissioners. Like, same thing with college football. There's not one person. So it's just one of those things, like, let's try to get on the same page. And that's what makes different tracks great and things like that. But there are a lot of unknowns that as handicappers and sports fans and horse racing fans of the sport, it's like we're trying to figure this out on the fly. And to Aaron's point, once we have more data and more things to kind of look at and compare at, hopefully we'll be able to get more on the same page. Let's talk about this fantastic maiden claiming race. I absolutely love these. I think they're the best. No, I'm kidding. I hate them. This is like the Saratoga angle where they throw it at the end of the sequence when you're alive to hundreds and thousands of dollars. Let's put the worst horses we have. Maiden claiming $20,000 for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and upward, going 1 mile on the turf. Two of the horses that I used, and I'll let you kind of get into some other ones. I'll scroll down here. If you listen to me on Monday, or if you've listened to me rant about New York, you would know by now. I'm going to look at the horses that have run recently at New York. Now, granted, these two horses, the 1 Sandra's Mind and the 3 St. Mary Glees, did run their most recent races here at Gulfstream. But kind of take a look at their performances when they came down here and tell me that they weren't good. The 1 Sandra's Mind was absolutely dreadful in New York. I mean, we're talking to the point where, Aaron, if it was me, you, and Sandra's Mind, I think we would beat her. She was just absolutely horrible. But she comes to Gulfstream, drops into the spot, and finishes second by a neck at 16-1. I had her on that day. I was really, really upset I couldn't get that home because I knew that she would just run well. And if you go by Tom Bush, he's winning at 20% at this spot and 5 out of 10 in the money. Edgar Zayas picks up the mount again. That's a positive to me. I think 9-2 is a good price for her. And the 3 St. Mary Glees ran a very, very, very good race here again. She didn't run quite as well, but she looked pretty good when coming from New York. I've said this on time and time again. Maybe the 1 and the 3 were the spots to use them last time out, especially the 1 at 16-1, but I'm all over those. I went deeper. I also used the 9 when the first time starter. Maybe you'll talk about her, and the 10, but I'm not nearly as bullish as I am on the 1 and the 3. How did you kind of see this finale in this maiden claiming spot?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, anybody that's watched the show knows this is going to be a trifecta box race for me. I say it a million times. When you've got 12 horses and they all suck and you could go 100 different ways, it really doesn't matter who comes in. The try is going to pay, and I have no strong opinion here. So I went 3, 9, 11, 12 trifecta box here. So the 3 and 9, definitely two horses we had in common. The 9, it's enough of an intrigue as a horse making her debut. I think it just makes sense. It's not like this horse was a huge purchase price and dropping in for 20. It's just like, yeah, this is where the horse needs to run. So I thought the 9 had some intrigue for a very good barn, obviously, with Christophe Clement. The 3, I agreed with everything you said. My top choice was actually the 12. I thought this was a very interesting horse at 6-1. Finally got on the turf last time out in her third start. Ran pretty well, closed up pretty nicely, going 7.5 furlongs here, same level. Got second, beating the length. And, I really liked it. And so now second time out on the turf, it's same distance basically at a mile. I kind of think the horse broke pretty poor last time out, right? And I kind of think with a better trip, the horse will get better positioning and you'll see an improvement out of the horse. And that's always what I look for in this race. Who can improve? Because there isn't much. These horses have not shown a lot of talent. That's why they're in a $20,000 maiden claiming event. So I really like the 12. I kind of hope, this is a filly that gets ignored a little bit at the window. 6-1 is a price I would take. And Gaffalione, like I say, gets right back aboard after that second place effort last time. So with a little better start, maybe the 12 can make some noise here. I also like the horse just one spot to her inside. Now, Ricky, this is not a horse I would use in your situation because we've talked about this kind of horse a lot, right? This is your Saddler's Joy. This is your Code of Honor. This is your 10 horse last Thursday, right? Has had a million chances at the level, right? But for a trifecta, the 11 makes sense because hits the board a lot, has been in this level a lot, has seen these conditions a lot. This is a really consistent, I'm going to hit the board in this type of race type of horse. And so for all those reasons, that's one I had to use. The one big thing that makes me think, I don't know, maybe this horse has a shot, Luis Saez gets aboard. So that's a good sign. So I thought the 11 was one you kind of had to use here, especially if you're playing a try. So the 12 and 11, the one I used also with the 3 and the 9. I'll touch on your 1. Since Mike Somich is in the background listening, I wasn't at the wedding when this horse was 16-1. I don't want to be at the funeral when this horse goes off at a way shorter price today and runs like shit. So I'm not going to use the 1. I'm going to take a little bit of a shot against. I don't really blame you, but I didn't like the horse last time. I'm not going to use the horse this time.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. I mean, this is a repeat of that race, drawing the rail last time out. We'll draw the rail here again. I do like the 11. It's funny you talk about the Saddler's Joy thing. I completely agree. I think I learned my lesson. But at the same time, the 11 corded is dropping in class. This is a 40,000 and will be making her first start in not her first start at Gulfstream, but running her first start in quite a long time, I should say, Gulfstream, coming from New York. If you buy into any stock like I do on the 1 and 3 and how they came when they were running it on the New York circuit or the New York tracks, whatever you want to put it, they came back and have run really, really well here. So I think the 11 at 4-1 it's a little bit too short of a price, to be honest. I wish I could have seen a little bit in the 5 or 6-1 range. And I completely agree about the 12. That was the other one you used, Uptown Queen. I'm just worried, I guess, about that post for her. I don't know where she's going to factor in. There's not a lot of time. And I worry about the same thing with the 11. There's just not a lot of time into that first turn. I did use the 9 and 10, so you can say, well, they're on the outside. I just think when you start to get into those double-digit post positions, it's a little bit. Are there scratch? I think there's scratches in this spot, right?
Oh,
That we might be cutting down. If someone can get that, we might actually. I forgot to mark them down. So if that's the case, then my point's a little bit.
No scratches in this race, actually. No scratches.
So no scratches. Okay, so they will be going in that spot. Mike says no love for a 6 wiring the field. I mean, it's possible. I just don't think she's as good. I worry about. I worry about her passing horses. I know this is one of Mike's favorite angles. I don't know how many horses she's ever really passed and how much ground she's ever made up. That's my issue. Sure, if she can get to the lead, I think all these horses have the ability to get to the lead and potentially go gate to wire just because of the quality of the field. I just think that the 1, for example, would be more willing to do that. What do you think of the 6?
Well, one thing about it, you don't have to worry about passing horses if you get to the lead. So that's, I think, Samich's point of it's like, hey, let's get to the lead with the 6. Mike, I'm kind of banking on the 12 breaking a little better and being a little more forwardly placed. I think you're going to have to go out of the gate if you're the 12 because you don't want to get hung wide. I kind of think there's going to be enough pressure on the 6 to make it a little tough to hold on. I mean, I thought about the 6 an awful lot from hey, going to maybe hold on for 2nd and 3rd, keep them in the try. I don't hate that horse at all. But, yeah, and to your point, I think the 1 from the rail kind of needs to go too. So I don't know if the 6 can take him gate to wire. But I think the horse is going to be forwardly placed. And to your point, Ricky, and what you just said, when horses of this caliber get into a race, not many of them want to pass, right? So unless Brad Cox gets a hold of them and all of a sudden we can't pass a horse in 9 races and now we can pass 7 like they're tied to a pole, then maybe we could kind of consider, but hidden scroll reference right there, actually, for people that didn't watch the race. But I'm not sure. So I'm not sure you're going to want a lot of closers. That's why the 1, the 6, the 12, even though the 12 was a closer last time, really that horse doesn't want to be that far back. And so hopefully we get a better break today. But anyway, I do think the 6 will be around that lead. I just think there's going to be some others there. And maybe it's hard to go gate to wire. Maybe you want that horse that's sitting 2nd, 3rd, 4th in that position.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Mike points out the fractions on the 1. I mean, it's possible, but I'm just not going to I'm not going to discredit a horse that finished 2nd by a neck at 16-1 last time out. That's just me. I think there are a lot of ways you can go in this spot. I think it's wide open. Aaron, you made a case for the 11 and 12, who I'm not using, and if the 11 and 12 won, 11 or 12 won, I should say, I wouldn't be surprised. Real quick on the 9, if you're not familiar with the pedigree, Noble Mission is turf route. That's exactly what this one, Miss Ghislaine, I don't know how to pronounce this filly's name, but she should have the pedigree to go this distance. It's going to be a tough ask, I think, to win on debut. But Aaron, to your point, there wasn't a massive purchase price for this one. It's not like it was a $200,000 that's dropping in. That would be a little worrisome. But at the same time, I think it's one of those things where she could easily win on debut because there are a lot of flaws with all the other horses in the field. Before we get into the mailbag segment, let's kind of wrap up our tickets here. I'll start with mine. We'll start in race 7, the pick 4 sequence. I went 4, 6, 8, 9 with the 1, 3, with the 2, 5, 7, with the 1, 3, 9, 10. And I'm really banking on the fact that Brasstown can get the job done in race 8. I just kind of see him getting to the lead and kind of taking it from there. I just see him as a standout on the back half of this card.
All right, yeah. So I went with a $5 exacta box with the 4 and the 9 to kick it off there in race 7. I just think those two are a standout. Race 8, and we talked about this a lot. $20 to win on the 1. We both really love Brasstown. We're expecting big things. Hopefully, Brasstown just comes out and outclasses the field. In race number 9 is kind of my second biggest play as far as confidence level. I did $10 to win on the 7. Really like Mike Maker got a hold of this horse last time out. Looked very good. Coming right back today. I think that horse will be tough. And then in the 9th, just the wide open race. You go a ton of different ways. 50-cent trifecta box, 3, 9, 11, 12. And I got to say, what I love about horse racing, especially at $52 total investment, by the way. And just one last thing, what I love about horse racing is that 10th race is total trash race, but it's still extremely intriguing and interesting when you dive into those horses. It doesn't have to be a great race to be really entertaining when you're betting these races, because there's so many different angles you can take that are interesting. And it's like, wow, say you love, let's just take Samich as an example. Say you love that 6 and you get a board and you're like, I think this horse can go gate to wire. And then let's say she does, man, there's just no better feeling. And that's what makes it fun. It's a puzzle every time, no matter if you're handicapping claimers or stakes caliber horses. It's just fun. It's fun to try to solve that puzzle.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Kind of to your point, I hate these types of races, but there is nothing like it when you get your opinion right, no matter what race, no matter where you are in the sequence, whether you're out of the sequence, whether you're alive to thousands of dollars. Getting that opinion right, it just means you kind of saw the race on paper. It played out the way you thought it would on the track, and that is a good feeling. It's a good point. I do want to add real quick, my ticket is $48. I forgot to add that, so I apologize for that. All right, without further ado, we are going to get into a quick mailbag segment. I have no idea what the questions are. I haven't seen the questions, so you guys will be listening for the first time like I am. I hope there are no disparaging questions on my end, but if there are, I will address them to the best of my ability. All right, I'll let you kind of take it from here because I'm in for a surprise, I guess.
All right, I'll take control of the show here. The Rocket Hour mailbag, very first one. 2 emails and a tweet. I'll do the 2 emails first. The first question was, Aaron, you play, race by race, win, trifecta, exacta, and then Ricky, you play the multi-race. It's a 2-part question. Number 1, is that what you guys normally do? And number 2, why? So I'll go first, Ricky. Number one, yes, that's how I normally play. Number two, why? We talk a lot on this show about betting psychology and how horse racing is very tough on you mentally. And I will be the first to admit I'm very weak-minded when it comes to losing. I hate to lose. And we've said it on this show. They've said it on Magic Mike. We've said it on Blinkers Off. If you're playing multi-races, you're going to go through streaks where you don't win. And I can't take not winning for like a week or two. I can't take the losing streaks. It's too hard on me mentally. That's why I lean towards race by race, a little bit safer races. Yes, the return on investment the opportunity isn't as great, but mentally that's how I stay in the ball game. And that's what I have to do. So Ricky, I'll kick it to you.
It's weird on the bigger days. I'll be honest. I'm always playing multi-race. I think it's just more exciting to Aaron's point.
It is.
The opportunity is there. But at the same time, I'll play both. If I'm alive to a sequence and I love, there was the 8, for example, Gregorian Chant on Sunday. Forgot what race it was at Santa Anita. And he was, I think, 10-1. Not in the morning line, but 10-1 at post time. And I was still alive to that pick 4. I think that for everyone that played along, it paid out $350, which is never anything wrong. Probably a $48 to a $60 investment, something like that. But I said, look, I put this horse on top and he's 10-1. I'm also going to play a win bet. And he came back and won. That's one of those situations where it's like, I'll play both. If I see the opportunity that I think, maybe not even a horse I put on top, I happened to put Gregorian on Chant on top in that spot, so I was all over it. If I see a horse that if I have on morning line, first, second choice, 4-1 and 5-2, but then my third horse is 8-1, and I think that horse has an equal opportunity to win, then I'm going to throw a win bet also, or I might do a win play show. So depending on where I am in the sequence, I will also attack it that way. If I'm out of a sequence, then it just gives me an opportunity to try to make some of that money back. It is what it is. I'm not against playing single race wagers. I choose not to go that way more times than not. I'll be honest, I don't really play exactas. I will usually play, if I see a long shot I like, I might play a win play show, or I'll just take a win bet at 8-1. We've talked about that all the time. Sometimes getting a win bet home at 8-1 is sometimes better than hitting a $150 pick 4 because you were really right in that situation. So to Aaron's point, yeah, it gives you more opportunities to play race by race. You can make your money back quicker. I just like to try to string the sequence along, and that's just my preference. And if you have any angle that gives you think a better advantage, then play it, because everyone's looking for that in this sport.
Yeah, to sum it up, people email and say, I bought your sheet, how should I bet? And the first question I always ask is, what's your personality? And I'll get some really weird replies like, what should I bet? Like, I don't know why you asked me this. So it's all about your personality. If you're going to be pissed off at the end of the day and email me like I'm an idiot if I didn't hit the pick 4s and pick 5s, you don't need to be playing them. You have to mentally be prepared for that. For the losing streak, it's going to happen. I don't know anybody. I know some of the best pick 4 or 5 players in the world. Ricky, you're not so bad yourself, but it's possible to hit them every time. You know that. Everybody knows that. And Dennis, to your point, you and I are exactly alike. I used to play pick 4s and 5s, and I didn't like who I was as a person even after, because I would just get so mad and I'd lose sleep. And he's right. I can't. That's the biggest thing. I cannot take being right 3 out of 4 times and losing. I can't take it. So it's just the way I'm just much better now that I've decided. Look, this is who you are. This is who you are. You want to win every day. And even doing my situation doesn't mean you're going to win every day, but you got a much better shot to win more consistently. So and I get it. I get that the value is not really there. It's there, but it's not as high for me. But that's all right. I can live with it because I can sleep at night.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point. One of the things, before we move on to the next question, one of the things that I wanted to mention, if you are playing the multi-race sequences, you might only have to be right once out of 12 times, maybe once out of 11, depending on payouts. You do have to be a little bit more right to break even when you're playing Aaron's way. Granted, maybe you're not putting up as much. Now you could play a $5. You could play an $8 50-cent pick four ticket, not an $8 ticket, but a 50-cent ticket that comes out to $8 or $16. Good luck winning that way. I promise you, it's going to be really, really tough. So when people say, "Well, I can't afford this budget, I can't afford to play the ticket," that's fine. Either you can cut it in half, you can eliminate some, or you just use the consensus choices to make your own little bet, or massive bet, however you want to look at it. Those are suggestions. That's why when it says when I'm making the product, it says suggested tickets or tickets, but it's very, very explanatory that it's supposed to be suggested. So obviously, we're not telling you how much you should put down. Everyone has their own situation, and bigger days might allow for bigger budgets and things like that. But you have to do with what you're comfortable with. We've always preached that we can go 0 for 100 or 100 for 100. You have to be particular with what you're comfortable doing.
Yep, that's very well put. So we'll move on to the second one. It was a question, and I'm not going to give the names of the people for the emails because they didn't tell me. I will give the name of the Twitter because it's public. But and I know the guy. I don't think you'll care. The second question was, I'm new to horse racing, and I've caught on to your show and to the Magic Mike show. My question is, as a newbie, what advice would you give me? So I'll kick this one off. I'll let you start.
The best advice that I ever got when I was a little kid, and I used to go to Saratoga. Seriously, obviously they run over the summer. I was born in June. I was going to the track when I was a couple months old. The biggest advice that I would say, and it's just like any other sport, it's just like any other thing to me, look at the stats. This is, and that's my thing. Obviously, I love watching replays. I think replays give you a lot of information, and it will help decipher things that you don't necessarily see on paper. And I'm not even saying look at the past performances. If you know nothing about horse racing, the best thing I would advise you is to look at the stats, see what trainers do well, what they don't do well. If you're at the beginning of a meet, then try to find the stats from last year or try to find their personal stats. You could go to the track. I've done it before just to see if that theory works. I've gone with a literal two pages of stats, and I made money that day. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what the heck am I looking at the past performances for? Obviously, some of the best percentages in the world are 30%. So this isn't like a basketball when you're shooting percentages at 55. You're not going to see in the 50s. If you do, it might be the hottest a trainer's ever been. But you can just go by the stats and see how they're doing. And it's really, really simple to do that. You could just print it out and play it along right there. It's not like you have to get – because past performances, when I first learned, are really, really, really daunting. So if you just print out the stats, you'll be able to see what they do well and what they don't do well. It's not the end-all be-all, but I think that's a good spot, a good step. And just take notes. Take as many notes, listen to as many podcasts, live streams like ours, things like that. It's one of those situations where you'll get more comfortable with the more information. I never recommend past performances first because trying to read that for the first time, it's almost like another language. So just print out some stats or find something from the NYRA website for New York or Gulfstream for whatever it is. Just find some information and tidbits, and I think that's the first good step.
Yeah, so that really good answer. And here's my I teased this to start to show why I am jealous of Ricky Pasternak. Ricky, what did you say? You're 24, right?
Yeah.
So 24 was the age that I even learned what horse racing was. And that's why I'm very, very jealous, because I did not grow up in a horse racing family. Not that you grew up in a horse racing family, but you grew up in a family that knew what horse racing was and enjoyed the races as a child, correct?
Yeah. My dad used to own standardbred horses right here at the Meadowlands. So I'll be honest, he still always likes all those horses better. But like I said, I was up at Saratoga a couple months after I was born, and we've been going ever since, except for last year because of COVID. So yeah, it's just kind of in my blood.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that was not in my blood at all. So if you revert back and say I'm 24 and I know what I knew it as a 24-year-old compared to you, it would be like Nick Scope taking a $5,000 maiden claimer. I knew absolutely nothing, but I think that made me really dive into it hardcore. But it also, I lost a lot of money when I first started. I learned a lot of things the hard way. I think when you first start at 24, you think I know everything because you're just at the age where you think you know everything, right, Ricky? So I am very jealous of you because you're so far advanced from what I was at that age. So yeah, listen, take it from a guy that's done a lot of wrong things. Like I think a lot of people like, okay, I'm going to bet $2 across the board to start. I wouldn't do that because you do the same thing every time. I'm going to do $2 across the board 9 times a day if there's 9 races on a card. It's stupid. Don't do that. Don't do the same thing every time. Try to get better at knowing. Pick one horse. I would start with one horse. Don't do exactas. Don't do tries to start. Pick one horse and try to learn. Okay, I have this horse. He or she is 2-1. What is the best wager to make here? If I'm playing win, place, or show, pick one. 2-1. Probably need to play a win, right? 8-1. I can get away with playing a show. Learn the payouts. Learn how it works. Go small early. Just kind of mess around and get your feel. Then dip your toe into exactas after you've played a win, a place, and a show for a couple of weeks. Then after a couple more weeks, play trifectas. Do it slowly. And then over time, win or lose, you're not going to lose a ton of money because you're playing low amounts. And learn what is best for you. What do you like to play? That's a big key. You have to learn about yourself. Before you can even, in handicapping, you covered it. And I would do the same thing. Keep your handicapping really basic to start. But really learn the betting side of it first. That was my biggest mistake. I was all in on handicapping. I tried to learn so much, and I'd have DRF and Brisnet and Timeform and like 25 different things and all tip sheets and all this stuff. It was ridiculous because I wasn't learning the biggest thing, how to bet, how to maximize the horses. It's like, all right, here we go. I've got all my horses. I'm going to bet them $10 to show every time. And it's like you're betting $10 to show on 3 to 5 shots. Sure, they win or they get second or third and you make $1. And it's like you're wasting your time. Focus on the wagering part of it first. Really learn how to wager first. The handicapping, I think, is a little bit easier to learn than the wagering aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's one of those things where it's like, if, for example, and it's not the stock market, but if you're going to invest in the stock market, you might want to understand how much money you're putting in, what the company has to offer, the organization, whatever you're going to put your hard-earned money into, or maybe not hard-earned money, whatever it is, whatever your asset. It's like you want to understand what you're doing. So to Aaron's point, you don't want to just go out there and say, all right, I have $100. How should I play it? It's like not every day calls for $100. Some days will, and maybe some days won't. And not everyone has that budget. So you have to, well, just because my buddy is playing for 200 doesn't mean I have to. I might only want to be playing for 40. And it might be all on one race that I'm playing 40 because I feel confident. So to his point, the handicapping is important, and you will get to that point, and you will listen to enough people, and they'll be able to walk you through that, but that will always come. The point of handicapping, or playing the ponies, however you want to call it, is to try to make money. We're not just trying to throw money away. But at the same time, you have to understand how you can do that first. So that's a really, really good point that he brings up.
And that's why we structured this show like we did, where, yeah, we're going to come in here and we're going to talk about racing and handicapping, but a big part of it is here's what to do with the horses now that you have them. So, and again, that is just the key to everything. And I learned, listen, even when we first started the site, I hadn't learned that lesson of handicapping is just one aspect of this. And if you're going to be successful long-term, you have to get the second aspect, the betting aspect, right. Because when you minimize your betting mistakes, you maximize your chances of winning. So that is something that you just have to get right. And it's really a thing, you just have to learn it over time because the answer is different compared to whoever, depending on the person that you're talking to. All right, go ahead. You got something else?
No, yeah, I just wanted to bring up Dennis's point. Yeah, that's another thing. Lose, but don't lose too much. I guarantee you're going to lose at first. I guarantee it. But when I was a kid, when I first started using my allowance money when I was 8, I was betting $2 a race. So the most I could lose was $20. My dad said, this is the way it's going to be. And maybe not everyone has to do this. If you're 40 getting into it, you don't have to go buy $2 a race necessarily, but you have $2 a race, pick one horse you like to win. No matter what happens, you have $2. Yep. And I eventually graduated from that, but that's how I started. So I knew for Gulfstream today, for example, 10 races, I couldn't lose more than $20. I couldn't. and I wouldn't even be allowed to play every day. So it's one of those things where it's like, I know at the worst I could lose $20. It's almost one of those things, you go to the casino, put $40 in a side pocket or $20 and say, this is all I'm willing to lose. It's the same concept, because one of the things about horse racing, you're not playing against the book or the house. You are playing against other people with a takeout, obviously, but you have to factor all these things in. So to Aaron's point, you probably learned more on here than you ever would have at the track. So those are just a few things to kind of just keep in before you even get into the handicapping part.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the point I was trying to make at the very first one. I'm really jealous of Ricky, is because when you're 24 years old, it's hard to play $20. But when you're 8 years old and you're learning the ropes at that young age, well, now, yeah, hell, $20, that's a lot of money. And if I win $6 or $7 today, great, let's go get ice cream after. Where when you're 24, it's hard to do that and be that disciplined. So yeah, there you go. One last time, I'll say it, Ricky. Very jealous of you. All right, last question, and I'm also jealous of you because of your day that you had on Saturday. And this comes from Terry Bryan, who on Twitter, who later said that he caught the show where you talked about Pacific Gale and why you liked him. I thought we would just do it one more time. Terry Bryan said, hey, a lot of my tickets got blown up because of Pacific Gale. Tongue twister there for me to say that word. I don't know why, because my mom says it wrong too. Pacific Gale, one more time. Why did you like the horse?
So one of the things that I think I talked about this on one of the live streams. This was probably before I even became full time. We had some time, and obviously, unfortunately, the bigger the days, the more time there are in between races. That's just the way it is. We probably had an hour, and we got a handicapping question. And how do you handicap? I said the first thing that I do, I make boxes of each horse. And I for example, if there are 8 horses, I'll make 8 boxes, and I'll kind of just draw a little picture and see how I think the race is going to play out. When I did that, I put a lot of, and I try to break it up into tier A, tier B, or tier C, or tier 1, 2, and 3, however you want to do it. And I put a lot of horses into tier A, which for me means a lot of speed. So I said, okay, who do I think could be perfectly set up in tier B? And that's where I landed on the 3. I forgot the name of the 3, and then the 6, Pacific Gale. And I said, look, if these tier A horses, we didn't think the 2 Cinnabunny would drop anchor, but say the 2, or this my time, the 4 drops anchor, well, these horses are going to be sitting in a perfect spot. And because it was, I think, 7 furlongs, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You don't want, and to me, I don't really want any horses that are in tier C unless they are that much better. Unless they are like, for example, like if a Sadler's Joy was to run in an allowance at that spot, or knock on wood, we get Zenyatta back from the dead, like a closer like that, I don't want any horses in tier C, because even though they're good closers, it's probably a little too short of a race in my book. Once in a while, you have that opinion where they're really good closers at 7 furlongs, but I always like to look at that tier B. I think it's really important. The shorter the race, I really like to focus on tier A and a little tier B. Those longer sprint distances, those 7, 7.5, I really like to look at tier B. And then if you get to the turf, I always try to look at tier C and tier A, because if you're on the lone speed at tier A on the turf, you can maybe walk away with it. I don't see a lot of horses, honestly, overtake from tier B. That's just my personal thing. I see a lot come from the clouds, especially in New York. So those are just some trends and biases that I look at, but I try to draw it out. I try to see how the race is going to play out. It's one of those situations you have to find what's comfortable with you. And I take a lot of time watching race replays, and I take a lot of time drawing stupid diagrams. If you don't want to put that work into it, you don't have to. I'm not the best successful handicapper out there. If I was, then I probably wouldn't be doing anything else, and I would just be watching horse racing all day, and I'd be living wherever I wanted to. But that's just not the situation. That's just the way I do it. Aaron, how do you I know you didn't get to Pacific Gale, but I guess real quick, is there anything that you try to focus on, whether it's replays, whether it's track biases, whether it's drawing stupid cartoon pictures like I do? Is there something that you do that I guess you really like to focus in on and that you've seen successful handicapping come out of it?
Yeah, replays are my big thing as well. And I think you and I kind of have an advantage because we do this for a living and we have time all day where we can watch them. I remember when I was working another job and trying to do, racing, it gets tough because watching replays takes a lot of time. And so, it's easier now too, because I've got a pretty good memory. And if I watch the race live, which I try to do as much as possible, I can kind of remember it where I don't have to go back and look. But yeah, watching replays is the biggest thing. It's also the thing that just consumes the most time. I think the second thing is just what you said, trying to figure out how the race is going to play out. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot on the show, or you have already, just trying to, who's going to get the trip, especially in a race, like we kind of talk about a lot, because we're at a Wednesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there's lower caliber races. A lot of times these horses are a lot alike. So you're just trying to work out a trip. You're trying to work out connections and how their horses usually run, how the jockeys usually ride, things like that. And then the third and the most important thing is to keep it real simple when you get a horse that's a standout. Like I thought Next Go was a standout. Don't worry about the pace. Don't worry about this and that. He's just better. Brasstown today is a really good point. Doesn't really matter. Just looks like the best horse, looks like going to outclass the field. So you find those horses and you kind of anchor yourself to those horses. And then the other races, you do exactly what you laid out and I laid out. You try to go down and look at other factors. Unfortunately, I didn't have Pacific Gale. You did. So we both used similar factors. I probably had her more of a horse in category A compared to B. And that was probably the biggest difference why you got to her and I didn't, which is fine. That is why we all have opinions, right? And that's what makes the game fantastic. But biggest thing, replays for me, to recap, replays, how the race is going to set up. And then the third factor kind of trumps it all. If you get to a race and it's like, wow, this horse is a big standout, I don't take a lot of the other factors into consideration then, because I just think the best horse usually wins in those situations.
One of the things before we kind of wrap up, and I know Aaron will agree here, just be consistent. If you're whatever you're doing, if you're handicapping and you find a way that you love, then just stay that way.
Yep.
If you hate it for whatever reason, then go find something that you do like, or listen to people that you do like, or find something else. That's one of the biggest things I try to tell people when they're learning this game. I grew up with a ton of different things like that my dad passed down to me that I found successful. There are things that I don't like that he looks at, and there are things that he probably found that I look at that he incorporated. So always be willing to adjust and get better. But at the end of the day, just be consistent. Because if you start switching the way you handicap, you will find yourself losing a lot more than you're winning. And that's never a good feeling, no matter what you're doing.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. If you've done something and it works for a couple of weeks and then you have 3 or 4 bad days, it just means you had 3 or 4 bad days. It doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden you don't know what you're doing. Now, you always have to adjust. But what Ricky is saying is, don't take your big principles and then throw them out the window because you've had a couple bad days. You add little things in, you tinker with it. You keep track of the jockeys and the trainers, who's hot, who's not, how they're riding, how horses usually run under certain trainers. But your core values of class and pace, those always are going to stay the same.
Yeah, one of the things before we finish, like I incorporated time form. I was not a time form guy. I've never been a buyer guy. I'll be honest, and I will never be a buyer guy. But Aaron said, why don't you check out this time form? And I was like, I don't know. I've never really used it before. I've become an instantly better handicapper with time form. Obviously, Aaron's someone that I trust. And if he says you should give this a shot, at least, not end all be all, but at least give it a shot and then try to incorporate it, I definitely think it would help. And if I didn't like it, then I didn't have to use it again. But I definitely think it was a factor into not all the winning days. Sometimes I don't look at it at all, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm stuck, and that will be a deciding factor. Or I could be stuck the other way and say, I don't really know who I want to eliminate. Maybe this will help me eliminate someone. But to Aaron's point before, don't use everything. Don't use Brisnet. Don't use DRF, because you're just going to clutter yourself. And what's going to happen is it's going to overtake your personal opinion, and you're going to say, I wish I just did this, my first opinion. And usually your first thought or your first instinct is usually right. So all those things, I'm happy we got a chance to do this because it helped me kind of refocus myself. Because one of the things that we do full time, obviously we're doing this, and sometimes we get into a rut just of looking at the same horses. Like obviously for Pegasus Day, it's not a rut. You don't see these horses all the time. When you get to maiden claiming races, it's like, oh, we've seen these horses. They're not very good. They won't progress. But you have to kind of keep along that same theme. And you handicap the race the same way you would no matter what the level. And hopefully your opinion still sticks true. So I am happy, I'm happy you guys hopefully got something out of it, but I know I did also.
Yep, that's a good way, I guess, to sum it up. We've kind of went a little long, but that's all right because I think it's really important. I really do. The main thing here and why I really love this show, a lot of our other shows, there's a lot of frills. There's a lot of, stupid shit that we do. We try to be funny sometimes. This show is all handicapping and trying to teach people, trying to make people better. It is no bullshit. And that's what I like about the show a lot. And I think the feedback is, people do too. It's like, listen, don't do that other shit. We can hear that on Blinkers Off. We can hear that on Magic Mike. So that's why I look forward to it. So yeah, Ricky, I guess, do you want to close us off or?
Yeah, no, I will. Dennis, thank you. I'm not asymptomatic, unfortunately, but this was the best 80 minutes that I'm probably going to have today. So I'm really happy I got a chance to come on. I just want to thank you guys again for coming on. If you got a chance to listen to the Pegasus Day, we really broke that down into full detail. So if you haven't done that yet, please check that out. Obviously, it's a few days old, but the thought process of how we kind of look at races still applies, obviously. Good luck to everyone today playing. Again, there were emails that came in. We saw a comment on Twitter. Obviously, if you guys have any concerns, comments, constructive criticism, anything like that, please let us know. We are always willing to answer questions, give you advice, things like that, what we like, what we don't like, all those types of good things. Always willing to do that and interact with you guys. So on a serious note, good luck today. Obviously, stay safe, stay healthy. I obviously will try to do the same. I'll be quarantining for the next probably 12, 13 days or so at this point. So without further ado, good luck. Hope everyone has a winning day. And we will see you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Real quick, no Santa Anita on Friday. They are expected poor weather. I heard Saturday's up in the air as well. So we will probably be at Oaklawn for sure on Friday. So if you're interested in that, tune that in. There's no Oaklawn tomorrow. Oaklawn will start on Thursdays starting in February.
Yep.
I confirmed that today when I looked. So it'll be at Gulfstream tomorrow, Oaklawn on Friday. If you are interested in my product or Aaron's, we will not be covering Santa Anita on Friday since there's no racing. So if you're looking for it, there won't be anything available. I have Aqueduct and Gulfstream tomorrow, Oaklawn thrown in on Friday, and then hopefully we can get back at Saratoga, at Santa Anita on Saturday. Yes, that is true, Dennis. I will never trade one for the other. I completely agree. I don't even want to know what the ladder is like. So,
hey, COVID is better than a kidney stone too. Anybody that's out there, trust me on that one as well.
Yeah. So hopefully, again, symptoms aren't too bad right now, but we will push through. We will both see you guys tomorrow. So without further ado, stay safe, stay healthy, and good luck today.